Good morning and welcome. Morning. I'm Jesse Fortner. I'm a member of the board here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston. Whether you're here on Zoom or if you're actually here in the sanctuary, we are so glad to have you with us this morning, and welcome. No matter how old you are or how young you are, wherever you are in your spiritual journey and however you identify, whoever you love, make sure you know that you are always welcome here. We have just a few announcements this morning. First will be from Reverend Scott, so we will trade places.
So next weekend, we're focusing on anti-racism and inclusion efforts. We have historian Andrew Sorbo coming next Saturday. The sign-up sheets for the workshop, which run from 9:30 to 2, with free good lunch for all of you. Please sign up today so we can plan lunch. He's a historian who wants to give us an understanding of how we've gotten to the place where we are with American race and racial differences. So please come with us and educate yourself. And he and I will be doing a chancel dialogue the following Sunday, next a week from today. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you all very much.
A reminder that today at 11:30, right here in the sanctuary, there will be a hospice program. Just a reminder that that is happening today. And if you're interested, please just stay here after service. Last announcement is we have the UUCR auction coming up. So thank you to everyone who's already donated your items and made early bids and volunteered to help. There are fewer than 2 weeks now, and the auction will be on Saturday, November 12th. I'm going to say that again, Saturday, November 12th. It's a great social event as well as fun and a fun way to raise money for the church. For all those who have not done yet so, you can please go in today and you can donate your items for an item or service. We still need more donations, so please, if you are planning on doing that, do so as soon as you can. You can place early bids on items that you want. Don't forget, you can check and make sure you're not being outbid. And be sure to RSVP to let us know that you're coming so that we can plan for food. You can do so at uureston.org/auction or on the sign-up sheet here in the East Foyer. If you'd like to volunteer to help, please contact Kathy Deleganis, and sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, or Hannah Mullen, or you can come see them in the East Foyer as well after service. Now, let us center ourselves for worship. Please take some deep, whining breaths with me. Let us enter our time for worship together as we listen to this morning's prelude.
Well, tomorrow is a pretty special day. No matter who or what you are welcome here. Let's be clear. Here we welcome goblins and ghouls, saints and sinners, angels and devils, zombies and werewolves, vampires and witches. We welcome princesses and princes, paupers and farmhands, aliens and astronauts, robots and cyborgs, firefighters and police officers, nurses and doctors, cowboys and cowgirls, cowfolk of all varieties. We welcome Superman, Wonder Woman, Black Panther, Batman, Spider-Man, Black Widow, and Thor. Indeed, we welcome both superheroes and superstars. In short, we welcome people and all manners of living creatures. So here we welcome you no matter how you come to us. It's super to be together. Our opening hymn.
Good morning. Our opening hymn today is number 12, O Life That Maketh All Things New. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing.
Good morning. We shall light this chalice as we look to the virtue of hope, not to confuse hope with optimism, a panacea, or a fantasy that we may easily turn into pessimism when circumstances change. For hope is a deeper source of strength that aligns our actions. Hope needs courage to make it work, to cultivate change, even if it takes more than a lifetime. In the struggle with reverses and setbacks, hope is not stopped by them. Hope does not deny the difficulty and all the darkness that exists. Because where there is darkness, our actions create the light. Instead of darkness, we see the light of hope, and we work harder to create more of it.
In our church, we have a tradition of singing our covenant together every Sunday. Love is the spirit of this church. If you are at home on Zoom, we hope you will sing along with us. The words will be in your chat box. Here in the sanctuary, let's remain seated to sing our covenant. If you are visiting us this morning for the first time, we hope you will accept this song as our blessing to you.
Good morning. Now is the time for all ages. So if you're in this congregation here with us today and are feeling young of body or young of spirit, come on forward and you can take a place on the floor here. And as you see, we have our choir joining us for a special treat. Did you know that the flaming chalice was originally created as a symbol of hope? That is what our story today is about, and it's adapted from a story by Janine Grossmeyer. In World War II, in parts of Europe, people, Jewish and others, were in danger of being put in prison or even killed by Nazi soldiers. Many people tried to escape the war, and those people were called refugees. Unitarians in the United States decided they wanted to help these refugees, and they formed a committee called the Unitarian Service Committee. But these refugees came from many, many different countries and spoke many different languages: German, Yiddish, French, Italian, Polish, Hungarian. Anyone here speak all of those languages? No? Well, most of the people on the service committee only spoke English, and most of the refugees did not speak English at all. The person who was in charge of the committee, Dr. Charles Joy, knew that they needed a symbol or a picture that would tell people that they were there to help them, because without that, they wouldn't know. So he asked an artist, Hans Deutsch, if he would make the symbol or picture. And Mr. Deutsch was in Portugal, but he was originally from Austria, and he was a refugee from the war. So he knew how important it was to have a symbol that everyone would understand. He drew a picture of a chalice with a flame, like that. And he showed it to Dr. Joy. This symbol worked wonderfully. Soon refugees all across Europe were seeing this symbol wherever the Unitarian Service Committee was trying to find and help refugees. They began to understand that this symbol meant they could trust the committee. It meant hope, freedom, and love that they were searching for. Many years after the war, the Universalists joined the Unitarians, and some people drew a picture with two circles, one for Unitarians and one for Universalists. Now, we have many, many different chalices. And we light a chalice in our service every morning. And if I could ask the two of you to hold these up behind you, just hold them up like that so everyone behind you can see. And we have some special drawings that came to us today. So we had, yes, aren't those wonderful? And chalices come in many different shapes, sizes, and colors, just like Unitarian Universalists. These chalices are a symbol of caring and love. When you see a chalice, may you be reminded of the hope that the refugees found when they saw the chalice. And may we all be reminded of the wonderful promise of this, our UUCR congregation. Now, that's the end of our story, or perhaps just the beginning. Our choir has a wonderful song for you today, so please stay right where you are, and after they sing, you'll be sung out to a Halloween carnival.
now is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns with one another so that no one ever has to hold them alone. If you are joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a candle, or virtual or real, wherever you are, to mark what is on your heart. As members of the in-person congregation, those who wish to come forward and take a stone for each of their joys or sorrows or concerns and place them in the vessel which holds so much of our love. And if those of you at home would like to share a joy or concern, please use the chat function in the Zoom modality, but please remember that what you share then becomes public. Let us now enter into our ritual of joys and concerns. Let us be together in spirit. Spirit of life and love that so faithfully animates this creation, we are grateful for this community that is with us in both times of joy and sorrow. And we hold in our hearts this hour all who are facing any hardship or difficulty, those who are grieving, facing illness or disability in themselves or friends and family or loved ones. In particularly this morning, we hold in our hearts Bob and Marge Howard. Bob is in Reston Hospital. He's quite ill. One of his sons, Jerry, is here in Reston, and Marge is with us this morning with her daughter and son, other family members, and we send all of our love to the family. And Linda Holloway, we're glad to have you back amongst us after a fall. Whether shared here this morning or held silently in our hearts, may our joys be multiplied in community, and may all gathered here find comfort and calm. Amen.
As a self-funded church, UUCR relies on the generosity of its members and friends to fund daily operations and to ensure the church and its resources are here for us and others now and in the future. Pledges support our worship and music programs, our religious education programs for members and friends, communities outreach, and connections to Unitarian Universalism. We now invite you to support the work of UU Reston by making your donation to the collection plate if you are here in the sanctuary, or you can use the link on the slide in the chat box if you're joining us via Zoom. Thank you for your generosity and support for our beloved spiritual home.
Before I begin the sermon, I want to mention something I did not in Joys and Concerns. Marge and the family would appreciate no phone calls at this time, as you can well understand. So this morning, as we prepare for scary things like Halloween and the midterm elections, I am going to conclude my sermon series, my autumnal sermon series, The 5 Smooth Stones of Liberalism, which is inspired by the work of the Reverend Dr. James Luther Adams of last century. Once he abandoned his fundamentalist Baptist background, he became a UU parish minister and a longtime divinity school professor at Harvard. And he is recognized by Wikipedia as, quote, the most influential theologians among American Unitarian Universalists in the 20th century. Jim, who was known to his colleagues, was a brilliant and very kind and gentle man who wrote and spoke widely about thought and practice in our faith. And he is best remembered for his 1976 book on being human religiously. In that book, it was Dr. Max Stackhouse, his editor, who articulated the 5 smooth stones of liberalism, which kind of lays out the essence of our faith. And as I have mentioned in all 4 previous sermons, This image of the 5 smooth stones has a bit of an edge to it, for in the story of David and Goliath, David slays Goliath, the enemy of the Jewish people, with one of 5 stones he picks up out of a river. And so what Max Stackhouse was saying is that these 5 stones of liberalism are our best weapon, if you will, against orthodox religion, against encrusted religion, which does not serve the human spirit. So there's a bit of an edge to this image of the 5 smooth stones. Now I want to reiterate these 5 stones. I have them up here. Put the matchbox away. The first, and let's see that, yeah, there they are, but let's see the list of, and then we'll go over that. The first stone is learn, which means revelation is unsealed. We must always be learning new truths. Truth was not set once and for all time. The second stone is respect. We must be in right relationship if we are in a religious community with one another, with free consent of thought and no coercion of thought. Then there is the stone of giving. Give. We are morally obligated to seek and to work for a just and loving community and world. And we must be a prophetic voice in society for a greater good. Then his fourth stone is work. There is no, he writes, immaculate conception of virtue. We affirm instead the necessity for social incarnation, which simply means it is people who must make good things happen. Good must be consciously given form and power within history by us. It's not going to happen magically. And finally, and this is my focus for today, hope. James Luther Adams says we must strive for an attitude of ultimate optimism. Finally, we must live in hope. So I want to point out that all 5 of these sermons, if you want to look at them all, just write me an email and I will send you all 5. They're also, all 5 will be on our website in video format. But let's move now to today's focus of hope. We must strive for an attitude of hope. The first thing you need to understand about what Dr. Adams was saying as a theologian is that when he tells us we religious liberals must always live in hope, he is talking exclusively and passionately about hope for the overarching and overall human enterprise here on earth, hope for all of human society, hope for the human family, hope for our future on this planet. He is most definitely, as a theologian, not concerning himself, as most Orthodox religions do, with the question of a human's individual hope for eternal life or personal salvation in some other cosmic realm. He is only talking about societal hope, global hope. These privatistic spiritual matters of getting to heaven with you and your family do not concern him as an outward-looking theologian who is focused on the whole world. Now, you must remember that Dr. Adams was, as were all serious late 20th century theologians, looking for human hope and meaning in the terrible aftermath of World War II, which was without doubt the darkest and most despairing period of human history. Indeed, Adams himself had a direct experience with the dangers of Nazism and fascism and racism. On one of his extended trips in the pre-World War II period in the late 1930s, when he was over in Germany seeking conversations with various intellectuals and church leaders, he was once detained in Marburg, Germany by the Gestapo and questioned about his, quote, suspicious contacts with anti-Nazi students. And he indeed was on that trip smuggling anti-Nazi documents out of Germany so that they would be more widely shared. And his experience then in this dark period of, quote, as one biographer put it, deepened his sense of a global political and spiritual crisis, which he feared the institutional church, both in Germany and the United States, was not up to solving. Next slide, please. World War II was indeed a cataclysmic human event over which the world rightly despaired. It is estimated that between 3 and 5% of the total world's population perished. An estimated 60 million persons were killed outright by weapons of mass destruction, and another 20 million died by the resulting disease and famine. The wanton violence, destruction, and brutalities committed by humanity against itself during World War II caused many thinkers and theologians to despair over, one, the dark propensities and potential of human nature itself, and the dubious and troubling future of humanity on this planet. If we can allow World War II with all this carnage, what hope is there? It was into this vulnerable late 20th century context that Adams was addressing human hope in his work. Listen to his own words, and I've got a slide about that. Here's the quote. Finally, liberalism holds that the resources, both divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate, not immediate, but ultimate optimism. This view does not necessarily involve immediate optimism. In our century, he writes, we have seen a re-barbarization of the mass man. We have witnessed a widespread dissolution of values. We have viewed the appearance of great collective demonries, I guess it is, demonries. A realistic appraisal of our human behavior, he writes, both personal and institutional, and a life of continuing humility and renewal are demanded. For there are ever-present forces in us working toward perversion and destruction. And next slide, I continue the quote. Perhaps nothing exemplifies this better than the 20th century experience of war. And so he's talking about both World War I and World War II. To be sure, he wrote, there are many religious liberals who deny that war reveals anything fundamental about human nature and human possibility. There are those for whom war is only an anachronism, a temporary aberration, not to be taken seriously as a comment on ultimate human possibility. And then he goes on, but war is a relentless revealer of the limits of human nature and human possibility. It presents the human powers and aspirations as dramatically as does peace. This is the tragic nature of the human condition. And then he ends, still, there is something in the genuine liberal perspective that while recognizing this tragic nature of the human condition, continues to live with a dynamic hope. So Dr. Adams, spiritually, no doubt, and emotionally reeling from the slaughter and senselessness of World War II, which he saw around him, including with the Unitarian Service Committee folks from Boston, working as Linda pointed out, working to save as many refugees as they could, that in that context, he affirmed humanity must continue to work and live in hope, but only, he writes, after facing full and afraid, as he puts it, the tragic nature of the human condition, which makes glib optimism a dangerous commodity. In affirming this tough-minded view of the human condition, Adams was clearly parting theological company with those rosy-eyed and cheerful religious liberals, including many of us UUs historically, who refuse to face the deeply ambivalent and contradictory realities of human nature and the subsequent uncertainties and dangers about the shared human future. For several generations leading up to World War I and World War II, both Unitarianism and Universalism were liberal religious traditions fiercely optimistic about human nature and the human future. For example, let's put that picture up of James Friedman Clark. He was the famous Unitarian who, in 1886, helped spread Unitarianism out west by moving to St. Louis and building a church there. And that was from a successful church he built in Louisville, Kentucky. He preached in the late 1800s a famous sermon whose centerpiece was this familiar and optimistic affirmation. He wrote, "We believe in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, salvation by character, and the progress of mankind onward and upward forever." One rascal, by the way, who noted that most Unitarians were in the Boston area, recast this: "We believe in the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of Jesus, and the neighborhood of Boston." But that was a twist on that. So well into the 20th century, even with the two terrible world wars and other human setbacks, generations of religious liberals would recite these cheerful words every Sunday, expressing, among other things, their belief in quote, "the progress of humankind onward and upward forever." Does anybody here really believe in human progress onward and upward forever? And a few decades ago, my colleague David Rankin might have been speaking for our whole religious movement in the 50s when he confessed, "I personally have tried every conceivable technique to avoid confronting the reality of human evil. I attended an upbeat Unitarian seminary. I gave up reading newspapers. I read romantic poetry and the complete works of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I took up golf and hiking. I saw The Sound of Music 16 times. I refused to vote, and I listened to nothing but Doris Day records. But evil was still there." But James Luther Adams, writing in the 50s, again having experienced the abject failure of humanity that was World War II, was not so quick to the optimism about the human future. In his tough-minded writings, he was willing to face both theologically and spiritually the very real and dark and evil possibilities inherent, embedded in human nature and the way human societies fail themselves. And he was willing to acknowledge the uncertainty of hope for the future of our species. He said, "No immediate optimism. We may have some ultimate hope, but no immediate optimism." He was a total and sober realist about the permanently flawed nature of human persons and society. And yet he affirmed that ultimately we must, quote, "live in hope." Now let's look back to all five of the smooth stones to see how together, separately, they directly or indirectly point this way to the ultimate hope, which Adams is affirming in this fifth smooth stone. I draw your particular attention to stone or point 3 and 4, the giving stone and the working stone, which directly help us to arrive at hope. That is by being personally engaged with others of goodwill in the long struggle. And Adams again says again and again, it will be a long struggle to create a better and more humane society and world. Adams believed that lying at the very center and soul of religious liberalism was the absolute obligation that we have both individually and collectively to roll up our sleeves and get about without complaint the hard work of transforming human culture toward justice, toward beauty, toward decency, and toward hope. Now, Adams, who, as you might remember from the earlier sermons of this series, described God more as a verb, a process of creation moving toward its best possibilities, than a noun describing some sort of all-powerful, supernatural, cosmic being somehow directing life in a good direction from afar. Adams defined God not as a person up in a cloud, but, quote, that inescapable, commanding reality that sustains and transforms all meaningful existence toward the good and the just. And he believed that religious liberals must constantly lend themselves to this process of God, that God invites us into the process of transforming life in the best possible direction. And remember that Adams was very realistic, given both the duality of human nature and the absolute imperfectibility of societies, about how complicated and demanding this journey towards social progress was going to be. But in his writings, he nonetheless constantly challenged both liberals, us, and the rest of society to lend themselves wholeheartedly to a world that more reflects the human and the divine ideal. So for James Luther Adams, Unitarian Universalism, if it is to be true to its center and soul, must be an outward-looking, an outward-working religion, not a privatistic religion. He said you have to be a priest. We are a priesthood of all believers. Every one of us must be looking out as a prophet and a priesthood, a prophet of all believers, never discouraged by the facts on the ground. So now that we understand what Adams was affirming, let's bring all this talk about ultimate hope home here to us. If you are like me, living in this rather turbulent and troubling time in the 21st century, you're finding hope for the human future. How can I say this? It's a bit more tenuous and fragile a commodity in my heart than it used to be. Speaking personally, I must tell you that when I read the newspapers in the morning, my heart regularly gets battered by all the ways that human progress seems to be so deviously eluding us. For starters, there's the extremely troubling dynamics in the life of this nation. What with the absolute crazy national politics, what happened to the Pelosi's this weekend, and for God's sake, vote in 10 days. The rise of authoritarianism and fascist thinking, the terrible resurgence of racism, tribalism, and white supremacy, and so many other problems that seem to be defying solution here in America. America seems so far away right now from its ideals, and there's so much work for all of us to do on behalf of social justice, equality, and decency. And then, as if the mess that America is in is not enough, there's the globe's tenuous situation. What with accelerating climate change, widespread terrorism, numerous intractable geopolitical conflicts and wars like the senseless one in Ukraine and Ethiopia, widening economic disparities and instabilities, the water crisis in the world, and refugee crises all over the globe. By any measure, these are terribly dangerous, complicated, and worrisome times when human progress and the vision of a brighter future for every man, woman, and child on the earth seems elusive at best, and sometimes it seems downright impossible at worst. The struggle to make our world a better and more humane place seems incredibly daunting right now. And so many of you have said to me over the last year and a half I've been with you, I'm having a hard time hoping. But James Luther Adams, as I affirmed in the fourth sermon of this series, calls us to a prophethood of all believers, where every individual must refuse to be immobilized. And before I close, I want to focus again on Steve's idea that there is a difference between hope and optimism. Whereas optimism is the stance of the human heart that believes that, quote, everything is going to work out in the end. Whereas hope Hope is the stance of the human heart in the face of difficulty that looks forward to what is still possible. My friend Bruce Marshall, who's a minister over in Silver Spring, writes this: a friend whose wife is undergoing treatment for a serious illness told me that their physician advised them to approach her situation not with hope, not optimism. And this makes sense to me. Marshall writes, optimism, as I understand it, is an attitude of expectation that a particular result will occur, that a person will recover from an illness, that we will achieve a specific goal, that the Publishers Clearinghouse will pick my number out from the millions submitted. The dictionary, he goes on, defines optimism as an inclination to anticipate the best possible outcome. We are told that an optimistic outlook is a good thing, but I have rarely found it so. Optimism often leads to disappointment. And then he writes, when the best possible outcome for us does not occur, we are let down, we even may feel betrayed. Optimism then may become its opposite, which is pessimism, an inclination to anticipate the worst possible outcome. And then he goes on to define hope. Hope, on the other hand, is more resilient, more enduring, more helpful. Hope is less specific. And then he gets to his key point. Hope is an attitude that looks for possibility in whatever life deals us. And what is true, I think, about hope on a personal level, like if you get cancer, is also true about hope for humanity on the planet as a whole. If we live with hope for our planet, we are not saying that every challenge facing humanity now, every difficulty is, quote, just going to work out just fine. That war and terrorism, we can imagine, will cease, that global warming will be completely reversed, that democracy, equality, freedom, and decency will thrive everywhere around the globe. To live with hope is not to believe that. To live with hope is to roll up your sleeves and work tirelessly for what is still possible, which is more justice, more equality, more compassion, more freedom, and more environmental sustainability. Living with hope, as one author puts it, is the process not of being assured everything's going to work out, but of lending your few stubborn ounces to making a world that is better, even if it is only a wee bit better. Living with hope is simply refusing to give up in the face of difficulty. Here is a final quote from James Luther Adams. May it serve as a benediction of the heart for this entire sermon series. He writes, the affirmative answer of prophetic religion, which may be hard in the very midst of the doom that threatens like thunder, is that history is a struggle in dead earnest between justice and injustice. It is looking towards the ultimate victory in the promise and the fulfillment of grace. Anyone, he writes, who does not enter into that struggle with the affirmation of love and beauty and hope misses the mark and thwarts creation as well as self-creation. And then he ends, thus, with all the realism and tough-mindedness that can be mustered, the genuine liberal finally can hear and join the Hallelujah choir, finding intellectual integrity, social relevance, amplitude of perspective, and the spirit of true liberation. So as we conclude this 5-week sermon series, let us promise, dear you friends, to not give up on the process of rolling up our sleeves, to not allowing ourselves the luxury of despair, but to, with others of goodwill, get about the hard and sometimes it seems almost impossible work of increasing love and justice and hope in this obviously troubled creation of ours. Our liberal faith calls us to nothing less than this urgent work every day. And as you all know, there is not a moment to spare. Amen. Our closing hymn.
Our closing hymn is number 1018. Come and go with me. If you are at home on Zoom, the words will be in your chat box. Please do sing along with us. Here in the sanctuary, please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm born. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm born. Freedom! There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm born. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm born. Hope. There'll be hope in that land. There'll be hope in that land. There'll be hope in that land where I'm born. There'll be hope in that land. There'll be hope in that land. There'll be hope in that land where I'm born. Justice. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm born. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm born. Singing. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm born. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that
And I leave you with the thoughts of E.B. White, an early 20th century essayist and philosopher. Please excuse his initial male-female distinction. As long as there is one upright man, as long as there is one compassionate woman, the contagion may spread and the scene is not desolate. Hope is the thing that is left to us in a bad time. I shall get up on Sunday morning and wind the clock as a contribution to order and steadfastness. It is quite obvious that the human race has made a queer mess of life on this planet. But as a people, we probably harbor the seeds of goodness that have lain for a long time, waiting to sprout just when the conditions are right. Our curiosity, our relentlessness, our inventiveness, our ingenuity have led us into deep trouble. We can only hope that these same traits will enable us to claw our way out. Hang on to your hat, hang on to your hope, and wind the clock, for tomorrow is another day. Amen.
We now extinguish the flame of the chalice, but not the light and hope and truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry forth in our hearts.
We have a special postlude to share with you today. Our new accompanist, Grimball, was recently at the Van Cliburn Amateur Festival competition in Fort Worth, Texas, where she performed this piece. And some of us at choir rehearsal on Wednesday had the pleasure of hearing her play it, and we thought, wow, we really want to share this with all of you. So we hope you will enjoy this piece. It is called Raw Silk, a Rag by Nurit Teals.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I speak for the whole congregation when I say, wow, just wow. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, that concludes today's services. We invite our congregates attending worship on Zoom to join us for the virtual Greet Your Neighbor. And for those with us here, we can all meet for coffee out in the East Foyer. And we can enjoy our time together and fellowship and all that good warm fuzzy feelings what we can get. The link for the virtual coffee hour will be in the chat box in a forthcoming slide. And those, I already said that. So yeah, we hope you'll receive or use the chat box as a virtual receiving line to leave any messages about today's sermons and today's services. And for those in the sanctuary, please leave the chairs as you have them. And one final reminder, we do have the 11:30 meeting for hospice. If you're interested, just come back here for that. Thank you all and have a terrific Halloween.